Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Are you ready, Craig?
Are you ready? I might be ready. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the third episode of Podcast versus Everyone. This is Craig Powers of KookCenter.com, and with me is Jeff Nusser. And Jeff, Sphincter says what?
What? What? I don't know what.
Yep, that is not the first time that I have made that joke tonight. This is our third go around on the intro, and that's how dedicated we are to our listeners. We want to get this right.
Well, just imagine how bad the other two had to be for us to go ahead and go for this one.
Yeah. So just to add to the quality of this podcast, I noticed something. So when I made up the name, I kind of was trying to play on the Cougs versus everyone thing, but I realized they say Cougs versus everybody. So we're just screwed up from the get-go right here, but I am not changing the name. We're still Podcast versus Everyone.
It's incredibly representative of the low quality our listeners can come to expect from us.
Yes, exactly. So, Jeff, let's start out. Well, you're probably still on your keto thing if you're holding that New Year's resolution still. But what are you drinking, or what have you been drinking?
Yeah, so still on the keto thing, which is actually, again, going pretty decently. But I did take a break on Saturday to have some beer, and I had a Jackass IPA from Skookum. If you remember last week, I had another Crowler from Skookum, and I've also got a breakfast barrel-aged stout sitting in the fridge from them also. But I had gotten a Crowler of their Jackass IPA, which is one of their year-round offerings. And, oddly, I had actually never had it before, even though I've had a lot of their beer. And I think that's just because, when a brewery does a lot of, experimental things, different things, you always want to try those sort of limited release experimental things. And it just never really had the Jackass. And so tried that, and it was really, really good. Just a crisp, light, kind of West Coast style IPA, kind of the newer West Coast style IPA. Not as bitter on the back end as the one I had last week. Just a really, really solid beer, the kind of beer you would just, crack open when you get home from work or something, just to have something that tastes really nice and is actually pretty refreshing. So to me, it's kind of routine, right? So to me, this is like a Gardner Minshew. If we're on our Gardner Minshew beer scale, it's kind of like a swing pass into the flat to Max Borghi, where it looks sort of routine and just like, oh, we could do this 1,000 times until Max Borghi makes 3 guys miss and then trucks another guy on his way to the end zone. Touchdown, Cougs.
Touchdown, Cougs. Not to make this a Skookum podcast, but it's interesting. We talked about Skookum last week, and then I kind of detailed what they're about. I actually was able to go to a Skookum Brewers Night at a local bar this last week, and I got to hang out with the brewer, and that was fun. We drank some good beer. He brought a couple special beers for us to drink, including his Barrenwood barley wine, which I'd highly recommend, especially if you've had it in past years. Try this year's. Good. It's about it's a little heftier and a little thicker, more. And I was talking to him, and it's more of how he always intended the beer to be. So he's definitely taken it up a notch, and he actually gave me one of the bottles. I have a couple now. It was pretty tasty. And yeah, it's always nice to see Holliswood. He's a great brewer, great guy. So highly recommend supporting that brewery all the time. But maybe next week we'll talk about someone else.
I've got. I really do plan on drinking that Dogfish Head Worldwide Stout on Sunday while I'm watching the Super Bowl. So I can definitely talk about that one.
Well, yeah, excellent. You got to get nice and numb in case something happens that you don't really particularly like. That is a game that I don't like. I kind of wish both teams could lose, but can't end up that way. But for me, tonight I'm drinking. There's a brewery in Tacoma, which is easily one of my favorite breweries, called Engine House 9. If you follow
Yeah.
the Baxter beer videos that I do, I've definitely highlighted them before. They're really just kind of an under the radar brewery, but they make some of the best saisons, wild ales, fruited wild ales, and even their regular styles that you just get on draft at the brewery are excellent. They're actually opening up a new tap room with a larger production facility in Tacoma's brewing district. So they're actually going to be able to make more of their good beer soon and
Oh,
not brew in
that is
this like
fantastic.
yeah, they're not going to be brewing in this little tiny hole in an old engine house anymore. So some of the mystique is taken away, but that pub that they have will still be there and be serving their beer and all that. So they'll have two locations now. The other one will just have a tap room. But anyways, so what I'm drinking from them tonight is Genus Rubus. It is an American wild ale, which it's a multi-barrel blend American wild ale brewed with blackberries and golden raspberries. Uh,
Oh,
it is pretty tasty. It's right along the line of a lot of these E9 sours. It's well balanced. It's not kicking you in the teeth with acidity. Uh, I usually get heartburn. I'm not getting heartburn from it right now. Maybe after I down the whole bottle, I will, but it's just a little bottle, so I think I'll be okay. But yeah, Genus Rubus, it's excellent. Like, I know there's breweries around, some of my favorite breweries around that people will wait in line for a beer of this quality. And this one, you can just pick it up from any of the beer shops around Tacoma still right now. So, and it's been out for months and months and months. And it's just an excellent beer. On my Gardner Minshew scale, what I was thinking about is so it's an essential beer for me, like Engine House 9. I love having these amazing sours that I can just have access to and get and not have to wait in line. I'm really sick of doing that. I don't do that anymore. But they're still the same level of quality of those higher end sours that people chase. But just easy, you just go grab them off the shelf, grab them out the cooler. It's so easy. But so it's a little underappreciated, but essential. So I was thinking on a Gardner Minshew scale, in the game against Oregon, on the final touchdown drive, there was this amazing catch from Travell Harris, or Harold Travis, as he was called by Tim Brando. And then there was the touchdown catch by Desmond Patton. But in between, there had to be a fourth down conversion, which was also caught by Harris. And that fourth down conversion was as important, essentially, as the touchdown, because it wouldn't have happened. This beer is as good as any of the great beers that get more fanfare. But it doesn't get that fanfare as much. If you're watching highlights, you're probably going to see the touchdown and not the fourth down conversion. So this is that fourth down conversion. It's just as important, just as awesome as those higher end beers, actually sometimes even more important. And it's super tasty, and I love Engine House 9, and I will fanboy for them until the end of time. So yeah, that's what we're drinking, or what Jeff was drinking, what I am drinking. It's a little, it is a wild ale, so I might sip on it a little slower. But yeah,
their wild ales are fantastic. I love them.
Yes, they're just on point. They have it dialed in at this point where like everything they put out is a little tangent. They came out with a beer in early or probably late October called Pasadena with Love, and it was a lemon lime wild ale, and it was just fantastic. And I went and bought a bunch of them. And I was like, please go to the Rose Bowl, because these beers will be so awesome. But unfortunately, that did not happen. So I just have this good beer with a name that makes me a little sad now. Maybe next year.
Maybe next year. We're gonna have a new quarterback with Gage Gabrud. Gage Gabrud gonna take us to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Gardner and about his left tackle Andre Dillard, who just participated in the Senior Bowl. Yeah, I think there was some general positiveness, especially from Dillard. Like it seems like he really helped himself this week.
Yeah, I mean, they always say, and I think it's kind of almost cliche at this point, but it's true, I guess, that, the practices are more important than the game. So, the scouts really pay attention to what you do during practice. And, when all the draft guys start saying, this guy's really impressing, this guy's really impressing. One thing I know about a lot of those draft guys, particularly the ones who have their boots on the ground in Alabama, they know the scouts, the actual like NFL scouts, and they talk
Right.
to those guys and they say, like, hey, who's impressing you, who whatever, and obviously, some misinformation, teams, they don't want a guy to other team draft their guy or whatever. But I mean, there's all
Right.
that kind of stuff. But when a guy's name kind of comes up again and again and again, all of a sudden people start realizing, okay, like this guy is that's how they start figuring out these mock drafts. They start slotting these guys based off of what they're hearing from scouts, and so the fact that you're seeing more and more of these drafts pop up after this week with Dillard in the first round, like the mid to late first round, I mean, that just kind of tells you that means his name is popping up a lot, and that's awesome for him, man. For a guy who started out as whatever 240, 200. I mean, by this, in 3 more years, he's going to be like a 205-pound prospect, right? When he showed up to school, whatever it was, 250, 240, 260, whatever it was, to make himself into a 310-pound, sleek, svelte behemoth, is really remarkable and impressive. And I think, a super testament to Clay McGuire first, and then to Mason Miller in his development. I think Leach also deserves some credit for the offensive line development. I don't think a lot of people don't know this, but Leach was an offensive line coach first before he was anything else, and he takes a ton of pride in the offensive line. And I think when people think way back to that first season when he marched the offensive line out against Utah. If anybody remembers that, and Elliot Bosch is sitting out there answering these questions. And, I think that for him, as much as they throw the ball around, he, as much as anybody understands that it really starts up front on both sides of the ball. And, so I think he deserves, some credit also for Dillard's development and overseeing that. Cause I know beyond the quarterbacks, I think he's the most hands-on with the offensive line. So.
Yeah, and you get some dogs in there for the authentic podcast experience. But yeah, so I actually this afternoon the Pac-12 Network was playing the 2015 WSU UCLA game, and Dillard actually came in that game as a redshirt freshman, like halfway through because of injury. And before that, like UCLA was kind of tearing up the offensive line, and Luke was getting hit a lot. Like Dillard actually held his own. They had him listed at 270 at that point, and he was up against UCLA at that time had a pretty beastie front four,
Yep.
front seven, and
Yep.
he was holding his own. Like, and he was a redshirt freshman, so he's added those pounds because he always had that athleticism, but he added those pounds and yeah, it was really cool to see him, and it's been awesome to see him. Like, I've seen him 18, 17 on the draft board. So, if that happens, he's set up to have a legitimate career in the NFL.
Yeah.
And then of course there was Gardner was there. The game numbers were awful. He was like 1 of 8 for like 5 yards or something, and
Yeah, it was bad.
yeah, and but the game isn't like they say the scouts usually leave by the end of the game or before the game even starts. I heard some good things, some bad things about him. The bad things you would kind of expect. It was like his tool set, his arm, things like that, But he still, I think he impresses with his leadership ability and his intelligence and his adaptability and all that.
Yeah, and in a completely shocking turn of events, his team voted him captain for the game. like, like if that was the most predictable thing ever, that would happen. I think again, the buzz can kind of work both ways, right? You start, you can start hearing that a guy is not what other people thought, and you didn't really hear that. Any of the, like you said, any of the negative stuff you heard about Minshew was generally stuff that people generally thought beforehand. He doesn't
Right.
have a cannon, those kinds of things. But you didn't hear anything like, wow, the arm's a lot weaker than I thought,
Right.
or or boy, you take him out of the air raid and his accuracy really drops off. I mean, you didn't really hear any of that kind of stuff. So, I'm encouraged for him that, whatever people thought going in, then it was probably, largely confirmed. And, I don't know how high he could go. I guess it would take some team probably thinking, he's such a tremendous leader that he would be an asset. So, but, I mean, I don't know. I'm no draft expert, but I mean, to me, what do you think? Third round, fourth round kind of ceiling?
Ceiling, yeah.
Ceiling, yeah.
Yeah, I could see him landing more around the sixth, seventh, but yeah, if someone wants to reach up and, because if you think about it, if you're reaching up for a backup quarterback, why not get a guy? Because they're like backup quarterbacks are a dime a dozen. Like they're everywhere, and their skill sets are roughly similar. So either you're going for a guy who's like super athletic and has an arm, but not maybe just kind of as a mess, and you're just hoping he kind of clicks for you, or maybe you get a guy like Gardner who's almost like an extra coach, and having him in the film room and having him on the sideline. That could be something that appeals to someone, and obviously he's still a good quarterback, so he could be a guy that still they believe they can put him in and he'll produce in some way. So and obviously the success of Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes and stuff, I think helps him out, because they're traditional air raid quarterbacks who never took snaps under center in college, and you just don't hear about that concern anymore, that like having that snaps under center concern, which is great.
And I think it just depends on whether a team sees him as maybe a future starter. Like, I think that's really what it comes down to. Right. If they look at you and go, maybe a future starter, then you're talking third, fourth round, right? Beyond that, then you're talking, okay, maybe he'll be a nice backup and, surprise somebody or something. And and I think to Luke Falk, right? So Falk went in seventh round, is that right? Seventh round to Tennessee. And I just I have a hard time, and I know that every draft is its own, little unicorn or whatever. Like it's its own thing, and you can't say, well, this guy went here this year, so that means this guy's going to go here the next year. It's obviously all dynamic, but I just kind of have a hard time believing scouts will look at Minshew and his tape and the things he was able to do and sort of say to themselves, yeah, I mean, he's basically Luke Falk. And that's not to totally rip on Falk, but I mean, we all know he did not have, the greatest senior year, that he really regressed as each year went on. If you're evaluating these guys honestly, it's hard to see how Falk was a better pro prospect after his senior year than Minshew is right now. So, maybe it doesn't make a difference. Maybe he still ends up in that 6th, 7th round range, but I don't know. I have a feeling some team is going to look at, just the personality. They're going to do the interviews, and somebody's going to fall for him, really. I mean, they're just going to kind of go, okay, maybe we think he's a 6th round talent, but there's just something there, and maybe he goes, 5th round or something like that. So
yeah, yep, absolutely. So again, football is humming along. We have guys that we can talk about in the draft, which just that we have a guy talking about a first rounder. Like, this is things that we have starting to get used to now, like guys getting drafted every year. On the flip side, again, it is time to talk about Cougar basketball. We talked about this last week, Jeff. We made sure to record the podcast so that it comes before the basketball game. And we didn't talk about the
we didn't talk about the basketball game.
We didn't preview them at all. And honestly, I don't intend to talk much about UCLA and USC very much tonight either.
No? Should we talk about how we thought Ernie Kemp might have been fired?
That's the most interesting thing, yeah. So, what was it? Was that yesterday?
That was yesterday. So Monday, depending on what day you're listening.
Monday. WSU sent out a little curious thing about the weekly media call being delayed, or to an undetermined time and something like that. And so, our ears perked up over on the Coug Center Slack, and we were thinking, hey, maybe it happened. Like maybe Chun figured out the buyout. Maybe Ernie got sick of it. Who knows? And so we're thinking maybe this is it, but ultimately not so much.
Yeah, I mean, when that email came, because they send the sports information person responsible for basketball sends this thing every week that says, Ernie Kent's weekly teleconference news conference is on Monday at blank blank blank, and it says, if you can call in on the phone and talk to coach that way. Okay, so anyway, so it says all this stuff. Well, this week's comes out and says, in big like all caps letters, you know, news conference has been postponed indefinitely. No rescheduled date known yet. And I'm like, okay, like that's odd. Like, and I know our listeners probably don't know this, but that's weird. Like that generally doesn't happen. Usually it's like, coach is traveling, he missed a plane, whatever. We're going to do it on Tuesday at 3:00 or something. It's usually what it says. You go, okay, whatever. So I saw this and I just thought, oh, just like you said, like maybe this is it. Maybe it actually happened. Like maybe, so I'm like thinking, we're bouncing this around. Maybe it happened. I start going to Twitter. I'm looking like at the players feeds, trying to see, are they saying anything, and then finally I decide, you know what, if in case this is it, I'm going to write it right now. It's just like during my lunch at school. And I'm like, I'm just going to go ahead and write it. I'm just going to go ahead and write, 300 words. Ernie Kent's been fired. And I'm just going to like start writing, what this would look like. And, by the time I got done with it, I was just like, even if this doesn't happen, this has been like the most fun basketball thing I've written in so long, and look, I'm typically not a guy to dance on a guy's grave. I mean, when it comes to his job. And I mean, I remember back when it was Ken Bone, like I tried to be really like delicate with that. Cause I was like, Bone, I think was a good guy and I think he was a good coach. I think he had serious problems, especially at the end with acquiring talent. Mm-hmm. But he was a fundamentally decent dude and he wasn't breaking the bank with his salary. Like it was, I think he was making 750 or 800,000, something like that. It's not like, I don't know. Like I just looked at it and went, this guy is not, becoming wealthy on the back of WSU. And, I was sad that he didn't work out and all these things. So when he was going down, I just kind of took this idea, like I'm going to be very tactful about how I write about it. I'm not going to make it seem like I'm excited, even though I thought it was probably time to move on. Right now, though, no. I will dance on Ernie Kent's grave. I will 100%. I will celebrate. I will party. I will pop so many beers the day he finally gets fired because it is such a train wreck.
And speaking of that train wreck, there was some quintessential Ernie ball this weekend.
Yeah, we should probably define Ernie ball because I think this is like a you and me thing, but like I think sometimes fans don't really think about it this way.
Is there any better way to define Ernie ball than shooting 77% from the field in a half and only being up by 4 points?
That is quintessential Ernie ball.
That was like I was sad I couldn't watch it because I don't have ESPNU. I mean, not really. But like, oh my gosh, like that's like perfect. Like where your team is shooting lights out, like 80 plus effective field goal percentage.
Yeah, and it's not like it was only twos. I mean, there was a bunch of threes mixed in there too.
Was I think five threes or so, and they were like
something like
5 or 10 or like so they were like 80, almost 90% effective field goal percentage, and they're only up 4 because they're turning the ball over a bunch, which has been a problem with past Ernie teams, and for some reason this Ernie team is not in Pac-12 play. It's sometimes, but like they've not turned the ball over quite as much, so it seems like maybe they put some emphasis on that this year. There are individuals who turn the ball over a lot, but yeah, so they turned the ball over a ton. I think they were at like 12 or so turnovers at halftime. And they just didn't play a lick of like they didn't play defense. There's when you're up 77, you're shooting 77% from the field, and then later, with about 10 minutes left, they were still hovering around 70% effective field goal percentage, 62% pure field goal percentage. They they still were like down by 9 at that point. Like like what are you doing? And so Ernie Ball is essentially valuing shooting over anything, which is fine. Like you got to be able to shoot because actually there were some times in the Ken Bone era where they could not make a damn shot. There were some times in the Tony Bennett era where they could not make a damn shot. And so it's nice to have guys that can fill it up, but when you're not doing anything else, when you're not playing defense, when you're not rebounding, and when you're not taking care of the ball, it doesn't matter how well you're shooting. If you're turning the ball over 33% of the time, like that doesn't matter.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point that I wrote about a couple of years ago, and this is also part of Ernie Ball. It really is just only shooting when it comes to point production, and I know that's what most people look at when they think of, points. And again, like we even kind of did it, right? We were like, you shot 77%, you're only up by 4 points, and it's like, one of the things that we talk about with our advanced statistics, and again, they're not really advanced. They're just percentages,
Yeah.
it's just a percentage. And so one of the things that we know is that there's actually 4 factors that go into offense and defense. Shooting is obviously the biggest.
Yep.
And most prominent. But then you also have turnovers, offensive rebounding, and how often you go to the free throw line. And so these things also play in, and they together, people colloquially know them as the 4 factors, right? Well, Ernie, it's really all about shooting. They don't offensive rebound. They did a really, really bad job in this game of taking care of the basketball. And it really just depends on, I think, which guy ends up, holding the ball the most and which guys so when they start making guys create, that's when they get in the most trouble. So Ellaby had a bunch of turnovers late.
Right.
Franks had some turnovers late. Like those are not the 2 guys you want handling the basketball. And yet Oregon, I think, did a good job of forcing it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, so you got these turnovers, and it's like, so all of a sudden, like by the end of the game, you've had overall, and I know the second half they didn't shoot obviously nearly as well, but overall they had a good shooting game. One of their better shooting games in Pac-12 play, and yet they only scored less than 1 point per possession. And like an average offensive team in the Pac-12, average, I say median offensive team, scores at like a 1.06 point per possession clip. And so it's like, it's mind boggling because there's just this sense that, okay, all we need to do is shoot, and it's like, that's not all you need to do. John Gassaway came up with this idea of shot volume, where he said, look, we can kind of see how effective a team will be on offense by not just looking at their shooting, but also looking at how many offensive rebounds they get, which give them extra opportunities to shoot, and how few turnovers they have, which also give them extra opportunities to shoot. So it's like, when you eliminate those 2 things, because WSU doesn't really do either of those 2 things well, you really limit the amount of points you can actually score. And that's how you have a team that can shoot pretty well. And Ernie's had that most years, teams that can shoot pretty well, and yet offenses that are like mediocre to bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's how you end up with, a sub 200 ranked KenPom. And I'm assuming in the NCAA's net rating, they are sub 200 as well. Like because you can't have an elite offense and be that bad. Like, so they still this year are a good shooting team overall, especially when you factor in all the teams they played in the non-conference.
Yeah, so I'm looking at it right now. Their effective field goal percentage on offense for the season is 43rd in the country.
Yeah, that's very good. And so if you're doing anything else on offense, like you should be a good offense, like at least a decent offense. But we were talking about, it's funny because there is one guy on the team who gets to the free throw line and maybe does a cut and maybe pulls down like a board once in a while, and it's Marvin Cannon. He's kind of and he's the least Ernie player. Like he shoots corner threes, but that's pretty much it. Like he gets to the line, he draws fouls, he gets in the lane, goes for offensive rebounds, draws fouls, and he's a great free throw shooter. But he only plays 22 minutes a game.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's probably why he only plays like 20 minutes a game, because he doesn't do all the other stuff that Ernie doesn't value, or that Ernie values. I mean, it's the stuff that he does. I really like him. I think he's got, if he was, getting any kind of coaching whatsoever, I think he could be a really good defender. But his ability to get to the free throw line is unlike anybody else on the team. And that, by the way, is another one of those things that the team does not do well. They're ranked in the 200s nationally in the ratio of free throw attempts to field goal attempts. So, I'm not sure why, and that's with Cannon being absolutely insane with the amount that he gets to the free throw line. So I don't know why he doesn't play more, but he's a nice player. He's very athletic, and I definitely would like to see more of him, particularly for what he can bring defensively just by being long and quick.
Yeah, he's one like positive spot. Obviously, Ellaby is a positive spot, and overall, and it's kind of a bummer because I wish Franks had a little bit more of a group around him, so that he's probably not meant to handle the ball and all that, but he's got so many offensive weapons, and it's a bummer that you just, even though he's nice to watch, especially on offense, it's so hard to watch the games, and it's rough right now, and it doesn't look like it's headed towards getting any better. UCLA and USC are not great teams, but neither are the Cougs, and it's just looking like another couple losses. So, Jeff, at this point, we'll say at this point, what percentage would you give the basketball team to finish with less than 11 wins?
Ooh, okay, so they're at 8 right now, right?
And so obviously the football team won 11 games.
Yeah.
So I'm saying less than, so 10 or less.
So fewer than what the football team won.
Yeah, sorry. Fewer. Sorry, fewer.
Yeah, no. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right. No judgment here, even though you're talking to an English teacher.
So KenPom has their projected record. By the way, 29% chance to beat UCLA, 31% chance to beat USC. I feel like those are too high, how they're playing like now. Although the kids usually do love getting up to play you at UCLA. They're both in the top 100 now, which is nice. They got some top 100 teams going. But yeah, so KenPom has them at 11. So that's like the over-under is 11 wins, which is, of course, how many wins the football team had in 13 games, not 31.
Right. I don't know, man. KenPom might suggest the fact that he's projecting 3 more wins with the cumulative probabilities. So like the way these probabilities work, there's a percentage that you'll win each game. You add up all those percentages, and basically for each 100%, that counts as 1 win, right? So out of their final, whatever it is, 10 games here, 11 games, they are projected to win only 1 game, and that's Cal on the road.
And it's only 52%.
52%. So that's a coin flip, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm looking, and then like the next highest game is maybe Utah the week before that, Colorado 33%. Like it is, every game is below 40% except for that Cal game, which is just, I say that they win 2 more games the rest of the way to finish with 10. I'm thinking they'll probably get Cal because Cal is just that bad. And then I'm thinking maybe they get, Colorado or Utah at home the week before that. I don't think there's really anybody else they can get. If they don't, I guess maybe they could get one of UCLA or USC. Both of those teams have been bad at times.
Yeah.
UCLA is going to be at least fun because it's going to be like up and down the floor. Like you might hurt your neck watching that game. They really might play to 80 possessions. Like that might be insane.
Yeah.
USC has
75
which is really high for a projection.
That's the middle of the, that 75 is because he's always pretty conservative. His numbers are conservative with those estimates. So 75 is pretty high.
Yeah. So that one, could be, especially if they get hot, and then UCLA, throws the ball away, running up and down, whatever. USC is obviously, that's a team that's entirely capable of a stinker. So, So I think maybe they get one of UCLA, USC, Colorado, Utah, which are all at home. And if you add up all those probabilities, they all add up to, I don't know, about 150% ish.
Mm-hmm.
140%. So you would think they would get one of those. So I think they get one of those. I think they get Cal. I think they finish with 10. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, before this weekend, uh, I would have had a little higher hopes of it. But they were very, very bad against the Oregon schools. Like what? Because I thought having Franks back, they'd put it. Well, it was the last three games really: Stanford, Oregon, Oregon State. Like I thought with Franks back, the Stanford game would be closer. I thought Oregon State, you know, the score ended up closer by the end. That LB got real hot and kind of got a bunch of garbage points, like garbage time points, because that game was in the 30s most of the time.
Yeah.
And then Oregon just they were outscored by 24 points in the second half, which is probably more indicative of their ability than the first half when they were shooting 77%.
Yeah.
So that was pretty, discouraging to see those last three performances. So I think before that, I probably would have been leaning, yeah, they'll get to 11, they'll tie it. But yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same way. It just seems like the Arizona State, UW, like at Oregon State, like there just seems like those aren't going to happen. But you never know. So this is what I'm thinking. I think you're right. I think they'll get one of this four of UCLA, USC, Utah, Stanford. I think they'll beat Cal because Ernie he has the coaching advantage in that one. And then I think I'm feeling like
Think about by the way, think about what you just said.
I know.
What did you just say, Craig?
I think on senior weekend, they pull out a win over Oregon State and get to 11 and then lose in the first round of the tournament and then Pac-12 tournament and then they end up at 11 and it's a push.
Yeah, I could see that. If they here's kind of I like to think of doomsday scenarios too. If they don't get one of these two, UCLA, USC, then it's at Arizona State, at Arizona, home against Washington. They are not going to win any of those. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I mean, they could very well be staring at, an 8-game losing streak when Colorado comes to town on February 20th. And then also, what would that make it? Like 8, sorry, I'm doing the math, 14. They would be 14 losses in 15 games if that happens.
Yep.
So, yeah, I hope for the players' sake they figure out a way to get one of these two.
Yeah, I feel like under Ernie, they've always kind of right in a hot shooting night or something late in the season, beating a team they shouldn't have. So I'll just say maybe that's going to happen again. Of course, they're the only team they should beat is Cal, but you never know at home. That raucous 150-person crowd.
The Zoo Crew, bringing the heat. Rattle the cage.
Rattle the cage. All right, so that's enough about basketball, I think. Is
it enough about basketball, though? Because this is basketball, too.
Yes. Well, that's enough about Cougar basketball. So usually this is when we warn you to leave because we're going to talk about politics. But this time it's kind of politics and sports. Because one of the most beloved sports owners in Seattle history is now running, or possibly running.
Maybe
running for president. And of course, he is not one of the most beloved. Howard Schultz, the very short-lived owner of the Seattle Supersonics, rest in peace, he tweeted out, I don't know, a few days ago, and he's just been all over the medias since then, saying that he's considering running as a centrist independent, which to me is the I'm a billionaire, so I don't really like high tax rates, high marginal tax rates, but I run Starbucks, and we've done a lot of sort of socially friendly things over the years that have made maybe the conservatives mad. So maybe the Republicans wouldn't welcome him in open arms, but he does have a lot of maybe Republican economic policies. But really, what we know most about him is that he was just absolutely terrible at running the Sonics and was a little crying, whiny baby and basically ran them out of town because he was so bad.
Yeah, I hate him.
Yes,
Still.
absolutely. Yep.
He stole my Sonics. I've told you this before. The Sonics were really my first love as a sports fan. Growing up, basketball was always my favorite sport, and they were really really good when I was coming into in those kind of teenage years when you start coming into your own a little bit as a sports fan. The Sonics were really really good from the early to late '90s. So. The Sonics were always my first love, and it completely crushed me when they left. And I always blamed Schultz. To this day, I still try not to buy anything at Starbucks if I can help it. But you mentioned kind of his centrist independent status, and I kind of read it the same way. I was more like, this is a guy who's a Republican who's cool with gay people and people of color. Like that's kind of what and abortion. I'm okay with abortion too. Like it's sort of like, it's what, I guess, like you said, a rich guy who, wants to be fiscally conservative to protect his money. And I guess one of the things that I found sort of most hilarious is, normally when someone declares a candidacy like this, usually the first people they can count on to get behind them are their community, their local people, right?
Right.
Where it's like, okay, their city or their state, and everybody goes, yeah, he's one of us, and we're totally behind this guy, even if maybe I don't totally agree with him, he's one of us. There was none of that. It was like everybody just went, we hate you though. like nobody in Seattle thought, yeah, let's get behind this guy. Like literally all the sports fans went, fuck you. And everybody else went like, what? Oh, great. Just what we need. Another billionaire running the country like a business when a government's not a business. And it's like Seattle is just like, oh my gosh. I think it's telling that, he's not in Seattle right now, right? Isn't he in New York or something?
Yeah,
I
he's
think
been running the sort of media gambit,
yeah.
going on all sorts of talk show, TV shows.
Yeah. I think that's pretty telling actually.
Right. Yeah, he didn't show up on the morning show in Seattle or anything King 5 or anything to be like, hey, I'm running for president, because they'd be like, dude, everyone hates you here. Why do you because here's the thing, how many people knew who Howard Schultz was before he bought the Sonics? I don't think, and still, if people aren't familiar with the Sonics, I've noticed that a lot of people didn't know that name. People don't know who the CEO of Starbucks was necessarily. Because it's not like a tech company where they're this founder and they're kind of this innovative driver and stuff. It's just the coffee company that you go to. I couldn't tell you the CEO of McDonald's or the CEO of, I don't know, any other similar type of place. And that's right, I just said Starbucks is the same as McDonald's.
It kind of is.
Yeah. So basically, we have the explicit rating already. So fuck Howard Schultz. Go fuck yourself, man. We
100%.
don't want you.
Right in the ear.
Right in the ear, dude. You took away my songs just like you, Jeff. The songs were my first love. My first sports love was Sean Kemp and Gary Payton throwing alley-oops. The 96 final. Oh my God, not so much the 96 finals, but the 94 playoffs against Dikembe Mutombo was one of the most heartbreaking moments of my childhood. And then when they traded Sean Kemp, I had a Sean Kemp shrine in my freaking locker. That was and it's just horrible. And you still have there's still such a connection to it of people, in our age range. And so you still see so much Sonics gear, because I think the kind of belief that they're coming back anytime soon has kind of been dampened, but especially after the Sacramento thing. But yeah, it's I try to avoid buying Starbucks. Honestly, their coffee is just not good anyway. Like
Right. Right.
one of the best things was when we moved into our new house, and previously, like, uh, Amanda would always buy, like, she would often just buy the Starbucks coffee from the grocery store, and that's what she'd make in the drip coffee maker. And I would just always be, so every time it was my job to go get the coffee, I would buy like Pete's or, something else. Like,
Yep.
like I would be like, I don't care if it's $3 more for this one, you're getting this one. But there's this local coffee roaster right next to us, Valhalla, and they're delicious. Like, I'm not even a huge coffee drinker, and I just love their coffee. And basically what happened was one morning we were out of coffee, and oh no, we need coffee. They just have to walk a block down the street and pick up some coffee. They grind it for you and everything, and then we have it. Amanda had that cup of coffee, never went back. Never went back to
Never.
buy it from the grocery store. We're getting this like freshly roasted coffee from a place down the street. And that was like, thank God, hallelujah. Like I don't like I
I mean,
just like
Craig, you are a beverage evangelist. I think that's actually what your life calling is that maybe you missed. Just, I mean, I know you're really good at your job. Like, there's no doubt about that. But like, you are just a beverage evangelist. You're like, no, this is better. I promise. You got to try it. This is better. You're gonna love it. I think that's what you're actually really good at.
yeah, I think that's typically an annoying quality in people around you.
Try this beer. You're gonna like it better.
Or like, oh, you're drinking that, huh?
Yeah.
I've tried so hard
Oh,
to eliminate that out of my daily, like, oh, that's cool.
right. Somebody shows up to your house with some Blue Moon, and you're like, okay, deep breath, deep breath. It's okay, deep breath.
And they're
But
like,
I swear to God, if he asks me for a lemon or an orange, I'm gonna punch him.
no, I'd be like, dump lemon juice in that.
Here's an orange. Put the whole thing in it.
I try to be like, oh, you paid the same price as that for that as you could have just bought like any number of local craft beers.
How many listeners did we just like offend and send away by ripping on Blue Moon?
I don't know, 16.
16. I
Did
guess
you
we'll.
want an actual number?
Yeah.
Is anyone super into Blue Moon anymore? Like, is that like a category that still exists? I remember when my girlfriend was like really into Blue Moon, but I kind of shamed her out of it because
Yeah.
she'd be like, "Can you give me a Blue Moon?" I'm like, "You can just buy a craft beer at the same price," and she'd be like, "Fine." And then I gave her some like wit beers that are not Blue Moon, and then she
Yeah.
realized that like Blue Moon is owned by the Coors company, and it literally, like, if you have it next to like a better wit like Allagash wit or something else, wits are not as common as they used to be, but so if you really desperately need one, fine, whatever, but it's a shitty one. And so it literally tastes like it has this real Coors Light tinge to it.
Yeah.
So if you're drinking your Coors Light and you want something a little meatier, I suppose you can jump up to Blue Moon. But there's just so many better wit beers out there, and so many better just beers to
Yeah.
drink. Like, and so especially at that price point. Like, look, if you're buying Rainiers and PBRs and Bud Lights or whatever, I get it. Like, that's cheaper. Like, you're not gonna be like, oh, I want to spend twice as much on this six pack of beer.
Right.
No, but if you're already buying like a beer that costs $10 for a six pack or nine,
Right.
whatever, just try something else, man. It's fine. It's
What I
fine.
always try to do is
And
like,
also,
so when.
don't buy Starbucks. Fuck Howard
Yeah,
Schultz.
screw that guy. And so it's like, when whenever we have people over here during the summertime for parties and stuff, I always try to keep my fridge stocked with the beer fridge stocked with like a whole bunch of different styles that are likely just a step up and better than like these styles that people would bring over. Like, does that make sense? So like,
Yeah,
like I'll
absolutely.
have some pails that are like a step up. I'll have some IPAs, maybe in some different styles that are a step up. So I'll just kind of I'll try to have like a crux pills instead of
Mhm.
like, whatever. If somebody's like, no, I like my, Bud Light, it's like, no, here, try this. Right. So that's what I try to do. That way it's like a non-offensive thing. It's like, oh, what style do you like? Oh, try one of these. It's
Right.
like trying to like something that's not like crazy, overboard, funky weird. That's gonna, they're gonna taste it and be like, what is this that you just gave me? So
Yeah.
anyway, but hey, back to Howard Schultz.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things I find interesting is this debate over who he's going to pull votes from, because we know third party candidates are going to do that. Like if a third party candidate gets any serious run, that's going to happen. And by the way, before I say this, is running as an independent is the most like chicken shit thing ever, is it not? I mean,
Yeah.
it's it pretty much exemplifies Howard Schultz, right?
Well, yeah, because even as an independent, like there's still a number of parties that you could probably align with, even if you're like you're essentially running in libertarian
Well, I
platform.
mean,
Why don't you
Bernie
go try to?
Sanders did it. I mean, Bernie Sanders did it, right? You know, he aligns himself with the Democratic caucus, even though he's not
But
really a Democrat. You know,
but
I mean, you
I
can
do
do
have
this.
I do have some like we need a stronger third party, um,
That's
but
absolutely true.
so I but at the same time there are already established third parties that like such as the Libertarian Party where like his platform aligns with them quite nicely, but
Yeah,
I honestly think he feels it's probably beneath him or something. Like he
I
should
think
just
so.
go the Ross Perot route and just make up his own party. Like Ross Perot's the Reform Party, and he freaking pulled. He was in Texas though, so that and he people in Texas loved
And
him. So
people in Texas loved him.
he pulled a ton of votes from Texas. I don't think he won Texas, but he was pretty close to winning Texas, or like was as close as anyone's been in a long time. It's funny when you look historically, there was like up until Ross Perot, there was much stronger third party candidates, and now it's like not like if like I think Gary Johnson got like 7% or something, and that was huge, or maybe 7% in certain states, but maybe
Well,
not
I know
7% overall.
Ralph Nader back in 2000.
Yeah, he got like 4% or something,
Yeah,
but those are strong third parties now. Yeah,
just enough to hand the
yeah,
election to George W. Bush.
yep, just enough.
Just enough.
And I definitely, on the Gary Johnson thing, I don't think it was like there was definitely like there was both sides. There was people voting like who would normally vote Democrat were voting for Gary Johnson, and I think there was people like never Trumpers on the Republican side who were voting Gary Johnson. So I don't think it was exactly like taking votes away, but I could see Howard Schultz, Hojo. Yeah, where's Hojo?
The
Still
third
alive?
baseman for the Mets or the hotel chain
The hotel chain. No, I want the hotel chain to run.
to run.
I believe corporations do have like
Corporate, yeah,
personhood.
yeah. The
So
Supreme Court said so.
why can't whatever
Why can't they
hotel
run for
chain,
president?
yeah, Hojo for president?
Excellent.
Who doesn't love a smelly, dingy apartment or a hotel that you're staying in just because you had no other option? Uh,
Right.
and
Everyone.
what better way to run as a platform? Look, you have no other option.
Yeah. I mean, that actually kind of sounds perfect.
But anyways, Howard Schultz, yeah. So he's, I, do you think he's actually going to run?
I don't. I don't, because what's going to happen is this, and this is precisely why he's not aligning himself with a party, is, when you align yourself with a party, you now have to go through the primary process. And
Right.
you're going to be examined, you're going to be vetted, you're going to be like, people are going to ask you, what you think about things, and you actually have to have a coherent response. And it's just like, I feel like this is a trial balloon, but like the worst trial balloon you've ever seen. Like it's like I'm floating the idea, but I really think I'm gonna do it. I really kind of want to do it, but I'm floating the idea just so it looks like I'm floating the idea. I don't know. It just, he's not gonna make it. I just don't see it happening. But the one thing that's kind of interesting about him, though, in just purely political terms, is if there ever was going to be a third party that could really start to peel off some Republicans, really this would kind of be it, right? Because
Right.
I hear I have friends who are conservative and say things like I believe in fiscal responsibility, but also a social conscience or something to that effect. And and because this, because of this two-party system, you just have so many issues under these umbrellas, right? Like it's these massive umbrellas of issues where maybe they don't always go together. I mean, we just had the Women's March, right? And that was somewhat controversial, while it was going on, because you had these sort of competing ideas, even just within, the feminist movement. Because it covers so many different kinds of people. And so I don't know, it's hard to see a third party ever getting real traction, just because the two parties do anything they possibly can to prevent that from happening.
Right.
Including, rigging the primaries in states, not like rigging the outcome, but like making sure that it's a two-party primary.
Right.
A lot of those things are written into law. Like it is just so hard for a third party to get any kind of traction. And I think really, if it's ever going to happen, it has to happen. It has to start happening at much lower levels, and has to come up through really, really probably decades. At least one decade, where you got, people running for city council as part of this party, and people running for state legislatures as part of that party. And then maybe you can start talking about, federal elections, because otherwise it's impractical. And like I said, the two parties, and honestly, maybe we can get to a point where we can have four parties. I know that sounds weird to go from 2 to 4, but that almost sort of balances it out a little bit.
Right.
If you get, some sort of, Republican, and then whatever you want to call, Howard Schultz, let's just, let's give it Ross Perot's name, the Reform Party, right? So let's go, Republican, Reform, Democratic, and then Democratic Socialist, or whatever they want to call, that sort of farther left progressive wing. I think if you can kind of get to that, then maybe you're on to something. But as when you've only got 3, it's going to pull probably more from one or the other, depending on, the policies. And so I don't know. I think there's a thirst for it, but man, it's hard to see a road to get there.
Yeah, the parties are powerful, and they're set in stone, like, for the time being. But yeah, I think I think you'd find a lot of people in the U.S. would just love if it wasn't always just this, like, oh, if I'm voting for the third party, I feel like I'm just kind of throwing my vote away.
Yep.
Like, so you get this thing now that we have where, I typically am voting to keep someone out of office than I am voting to elect someone to office. If you're really thinking about it, right? You're like, no, I don't want that person in office.
Right.
Like, and so I'm going to vote against them. Like, so that's how you go. You're like, ugh. Like, you're kind of weighing it, and you're just like, well, no, not that one. But yeah, so you're like, oh, well, maybe this third party candidate it'd be nice. They actually align more with some of my views. No, if I vote for them, then like, I don't know, you can vote your conscience, and that's fine, but, like, at the end of the day, they're not getting elected.
Right. And that's where I think it's gonna just have to start much, much lower, and kind of work its way up to where now all of a sudden, it's got to get to a point where it becomes legitimate enough that people think, there's a real shot, and it becomes somewhat competitive.
Right. And on that note, I wanted to sort of take us into a world that is so far from what we were just talking about. And this is our pop culture segment, where Jeff and I use our extensive current hip pop culture knowledge to talk about what's happening. And so, Jeff, what I wanted to talk about this week is reality TV. And I'm not talking about, like, singing shows or any of the stuff that's on, like, network television. I'm talking the bottom of the barrel, Bravo, whatever else, TLC, whatever. Either it's a rich person, or it's a super poor person, or a person with some sort of a particular affliction or something, and then we're having. So I know that your wife watches some reality TV. My girlfriend does, and I do watch some of it with her, because I am a supportive person. But is there any particular show that you've noticed on your television that stands out to you?
Oh my goodness, I've watched a lot of these shows. So are we going highlights or lowlights? favorites because there are some that that are okay.
So give me your one that is just absolutely unbearable, and then
Yeah.
give me your one that is like kind of a guilty pleasure.
Yeah. Really, so I've got kind of two unbearables. One would be Real Housewives Los Angeles.
Oh yeah.
That's sort of like that's the unbearable one. And then the companion to it is the other one that I end up watching because I also am a supportive partner is Million Dollar Listing and the Los Angeles one. Do you sense the theme here?
Yes.
I tend to find people from Southern, oh God, I'm going to offend somebody, but people from Southern California can be very douchey,
Yeah.
particularly rich people from Southern California. And so, it's like, like people that, they just live in this other, like this world that is just not even kind of sort of reality. And obviously there's people like that everywhere, but the fantasy land of Southern California is even just like another level, right? The people that are running around buying, $10 million homes or whatever.
Right.
So, that is sort of a major turnoff for me, and I have a really hard time watching those people bicker.
Oh yeah. I'm so staying on along those Real Housewives lines. So there's like a ton of them now. Uh, a lot of them are really grating to me. The New Jersey one, especially from a couple years ago, was just absolutely unbearable. Like it was just like these people are so stupid and they're just yell at each other. Why do you like watching this? I can't stand it. And honestly, most of the ones where it's like rich people in their 50s or whatever that are like acting like complete idiots is just a lot of it's just like this is really I don't see what's interesting. I know why she watches them because it's like look at how terrible those people are. And so it's kind of this like makes you feel a little bit better about yourself. But I have on that $1 million listing, I it's so I'll turn it on the TV like maybe when I'm having lunch in the middle of the day, and it'll be on Bravo from the night before, and I've seen that they just play that constantly during the day, and I've seen that, and it's a little bit addicting, because on the New York one, because
See,
it's like
I like the New York one okay.
yeah, because
That one's okay.
like the characters are not so bad, and they're kind of like they're kind of a little bit self-deprecating, and also once they start talking about this deal, and then you're kind of hooked in it, you're like, oh shit,
Right,
well, I gotta see if
right.
they complete the deal. But yeah, I've watched the LA one a couple times, and I was like, oh, these people are awful.
Well, this
Like
is how douchey the people were in LA is they had to bring in a couple of British guys to like balance it out.
yeah,
Like because the Southern California guys were so douchey. So anyway,
so
the one that I like, by the way, so I like the British baking show. Like that one's fun because like everybody's nice to each other and they're just kind of like, just a bunch of people making pastries and like, I don't know. I like contests where people are nice to each other and like each other. I can go for that kind of stuff.
So the two I found that like kind of that a line that I actually like I'll watch with her. I'm like, okay, I'll watch it with you. Is it's when it's younger people being idiots and they're kind of poor and like so there's two shows. They're basically the same show just in different settings. One is called Vanderpump Rules, which is named after one of the it's a spin-off of one of the Real Housewives of either LA, I think LA or Orange County.
It is, yeah. It's the Orange County one.
Yeah, so and it's her bars and it's about the people that work at her bars. I think at this point they don't actually work there because they make money from the show, but like it's really funny just to watch they're so dumb and their stupid relationship crap is hilarious and they're all like terrible people and for some reason that's funny. And then there's the kind of the show that's the simpler is the show called Below Deck, where it's all these it's about these people that run like basically these yachts for like people like yacht tours for like people rent a yacht tour on the Mediterranean or in the Caribbean or wherever they have, and it's about the crew, and it's like 10, 20 somethings just living on a yacht, like taking care of this yacht, excuse me, taking care of this yacht for like months at a time. And they like live in these little bunks, and it's hilarious because they just like get mad at each other, they're fighting, and they're having sex with each other, and they're just getting mad about all this petty shit. And then you have these rich douches coming in like being super douchey, and then they get to make fun of the douchey people. And for some reason it's like, this is all right. This is kind of funny. And so those two I can watch. Almost any of the Real Housewives ones, I just am like, I'll sit there for 5 minutes, and then I'll be like, oh my God, these people just yell at each other constantly, and it's so annoying.
Yeah,
Like
it's terrible.
yeah, it's terrible. It's all terrible. And Amanda just watches so much of it, like so much of it. Like our DVR is just full of Bravo. Like it's like it's Pac-12 and 60s from all the Cougar games of the past season, and then like Bravo shows, and then like whatever the few network shows we
By the
watch.
way, are we in agreement that the reunion shows are actually the worst?
Oh, I can't watch those. Like even
Those
though
are actually the worst.
yeah, those are so unbearable. Like I get really uncomfortable, and it just makes me uncomfortable, and they're just it's just they're setting them up
Oh,
to
totally.
like they're like, "Oh, let's play this clip." Like
Yeah.
they've seen before because all these people are watching this show as soon as it airs.
Let's see if we can create a fight right
Yeah, and it's just like I think that like the Baron over all this, that Andy guy is like a genius.
Oh, dude.
Like he has made so much
He's
money
made so much money with this.
like off this, and he seems like a genuinely like pretty okay guy, and because if you ever watched the show he does, the after show he does is pretty funny.
I think that's his trick. Like it's
Yeah.
the best that it's like they say in The Usual Suspects, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing people he didn't exist.
Yeah.
Like you look at Andy and you're like, oh, what a nice guy. He's always smiling, and he's pretty handsome. He's got salt and pepper hair. I mean he doesn't fight with anyone, and it's like behind the scenes he's like ginning up all these like WWE style showdowns complete with. I mean it's crazy.
There's such deference given to him too.
Oh, totally.
Like it's like he has such power over all these people on his show. Yeah, and it's just amazing to watch. Like he just like they just like they go to great pains to not offend him, because like if they ever say something and it seems like it might offend him, he go like it's like whoa, and then like it's hilarious. And if you've ever watched like Amanda will watch the after show, and they do a little drinking game during it, which actually got me to watch it. Yeah. But they always interview a lot of like celebrities, and they'll interview the people on his show, and he'll just make fun of them like the whole time. Like he'll make fun of like the way they act and everything. Like I think it's called Watch What Happens Live. Yep. Yeah, and it's actually it's kind of like I remember but before Amanda actually started watching all these shows, how we would consume them was watch the old Soup show, the Joel McHale show, because he would make fun of all those, and then eventually you get this curiosity. It was like, does that stuff happen all the time on those shows?
Right.
Like, and no, they pull out all the funniest crap. Most of the other stuff is like just dribble. You have to. Oh, have you ever seen the 90 Day Fiance show?
No.
Oh my God. This one there's been some, like, it's like, it depends on the couple, but it can be pretty friggin' interesting. Because there's called a K1 visa, where basically you can bring a prospective husband or wife into the country, and you have 90 days to decide whether or not you're going to marry them. So it's an actual legal thing.
All right. That's an interesting premise.
And so this show is about these people that do this K1 visa. And so often it's just like a blatant
And is it like mail order stuff, or is it like,
there's been some that seem like that. A lot of the times it's like if it's the male it's like an older male going to some Asian or American company or South American country and just like meeting a girl there on a trip,
yeah,
and then they decide to do the K1 visa later, and like they're never as rich as the girl thinks they are, and like
right,
there was this one where it came back and the guy was like totally broke because he had to give the girl, I think she was from Thailand, or I don't want to get that wrong, Thailand or one of the Southeast Asian, she was from a Southeast Asian country. She essentially had to give her family, like it was like a tradition to give the family like a certain amount of like things or money like to marry the bride, and he basically spent all of his savings doing that. So they get back and I felt so bad for this girl, like because um they were like they were like bouncing around just finding a place to live, staying at his friend's house, and then they like basically moved into this apartment which was definitely just an old office because like, and she like loved cooking, it just had like an office kitchen, and she like started crying. It's like, oh my God, like this is crazy. And so there's some really like when they find a story that's interesting, they just kind of latch onto it, and it's like it's trash TV because it's like horrible. It's like just to watch these things unfold, and then like and you find out like during the confessions at the end that they, even though none of them know each other, they all watch the show and they have opinions of each other, and some of them will fight on social media. They're like competitive. Like, and so you see all these couples that have been like fighting with each other the whole season, and then they band together with their, partner, and then they like fight against the other ones. It's like, this is insane. Like, you guys hate each other the whole time. But yeah, it's a fascinating show. It's really sad often because you're just like, who are these people and what are they doing?
yeah,
Like, why are you doing this? There's very rare occurrences where it's like two people who are of similar age that seem like they legitimately fell in love, or even like it's very rare that it seems like a legitimately fell in love thing. It seems more of a like, well, maybe we could make this work. I want to live in the U.S. and you really want to have a spouse, so let's see if it can work, So there's and then there's some that are just straight up like phony, like just straight up just trying to get a visa and then bolting and it's pretty interesting. Yeah, so 90 Day Fiance, I wouldn't say I recommend it, but
but I wouldn't say I don't recommend
but
it.
it's fairly fascinating, and I mean, it's definitely high on the trashiness scale because it's you're just setting people up and hoping that they fail essentially. Because if it was just a show of everyone like being happy and it working out, like no one would watch it.
That's right, America.
America. But anyway, so yeah, that's our take on reality TV. We're probably more experts in that than any other pop culture thing, but
That's probably true. That's probably true.
but yeah, so Jeff, you told me earlier you had a great kid story. Like,
Well,
what's
I don't
happening
know
with
if it's
your
I
kids?
don't know if it's great, but it's a good story. So this actually just happened today. All right. So if you are listening to this and if you live in Western Washington, you are likely aware that we are currently experiencing a measles outbreak. Yes, that is the disease that was practically eradicated like 20 years ago and is now making a comeback because people stupidly don't want to get vaccines. So we are in a situation now. See, my family is in kind of a weird spot because some of the listeners might know this, but probably not all of them might know that I have three boys, and the middle one was diagnosed with leukemia shortly before his third birthday, and so he survived his treatment. He finished treatment 3 years ago. He's 9 years old now. Everything's great, But one of the things it did was it kind of put us behind on vaccinations because not only could he not have the vast majority of vaccinations, but his brothers couldn't really have anything that was a live virus. So anyway, this outbreak is going on, and I wasn't sure if Tristan had everything that he needed, the 2 doses he needed, in order to continue to attend school if this ever shows up in Pierce County. It's like kind of creeping northward, right? And so I take him and his younger brother and me to the Kaiser Permanente clinic, and I'm like, hey, so this is our situation. I just want to see, if either of the boys need anything as far as measles vaccinations, make sure we're all kind of ready to go. And so they're like, okay, well, have a seat and we'll check. So they start checking the records and start looking, and eventually they call me back up, and they go, and I've also forgot to say this. So knowing that we were heading over, any parent who has children old enough to express their thoughts on shots kind of knows how children express their thoughts on shots. My children are especially emotive when it comes to this. And so when I picked them up from school, I kind of pulled the car over and I said, listen, okay, I need to talk to you guys. So, and they're like, what, Dad? I said, okay. I said, I need to explain something to you. I said, okay, so there's this disease and it's super dangerous. And in fact, it could kill you. And they're like, oh, no. And I'm like, yeah, it's really bad. Right. And I said, there's one way to protect you from it. And then all of a sudden my youngest Atticus shouts out, are we getting shots? And I'm like, oh God. Right? He's like kids have like this sixth sense for shots, right? Like if you go within 100 yards of a doctor's office, they're like, are we getting shots? Are we getting shots? Right? And so, okay, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm like, yes, buddy. Yes, you freaked out a little bit, buddy. And so so I'm trying to like immediately talk them down off the ledge. I'm like, okay, well, listen, like, yes, but here's the thing. The only way that we can protect you from this is with a shot. And I said, and I'm sorry, and it sucks. And by this point, they're wailing. Oh my God, I knew it. We're getting a shot. Oh, we're getting a shot. Right. Like 2 of my kids, like 9 and 6, they're like bawling, like, so, Atticus does this thing where he fake hyperventilates. He starts going, and you're just like, stop doing that. Like, you're not actually hyperventilating. So anyway, okay. So I'm trying to like talk him down. Eventually I resort to every parent's best friend, which is bribery, right? So I tell them, hey, look, you get the shot, you do it quietly, you get a toy. I said, I'll get you a cheap toy, okay? And Tristan's already plotting. Can I get a Beyblade? I'm like, yes, I'll get you a Beyblade, right? It's okay. So we do that, right? So we drive over to the clinic. I go up and I say, this is the deal. She says, let me check with the nurse, kind of see what we got going on. And so we sit down, and I'm still trying to calm the kids down, And she comes over and said, and this is like the receptionist. She comes over and says, so the nurse looked at it, and the kids are fine, but you need a booster. And I'm like, what the hell? How did this happen? Like, I bring my kids to get a shot. They're fine. I'm the one who needs the booster. And I'm like, are you sure? And she's like, well, we show your last booster in 1995. We don't show any record of immunizations before. They said, yeah, probably, my mom had the paper copy that they used to do, right? I'm like, my mom had the paper copy, and she's like, well, it's been, 20 whatever years. If we just want to make sure, we'll give you the booster today, and you'll be good to go, since you are a teacher and, potentially at a higher risk for exposure. And so we go up there, and the kids are going, we don't have to get shots. And I'm like, and I do. I have to get. So I went up there and got my shot, and I didn't even buy a toy.
Oh man.
I know.
Yeah, it's funny, like, because my daughter's so young, like, getting a lot of shots, and when she didn't start reacting to them at all until like the last one she kind of did. I think it was like, I can't remember what months you get them, or I think she was about 8 months old. She had to get shots, and she also had to get a blood test. And so we went in, and she got shots, 3 shots, and she just didn't even react. Like, just looked at me, didn't even say anything. I was like, okay. And so we go over to the blood test, and they're trying to, like, at first they try to find a vein in her in her elbow, and in her elbow, and they're just digging around, and she's just they had some like frozen stuff up on the wall. She's laughing. And I'm like, they're digging around, and then they go and that doesn't work, so they stick it up in her foot to draw the blood. It's just like, what the heck, kid? Like, I would be crying right now the way they were digging around. But then, like now, like her most recent one, we got a little bit of a cry, like kind of like the how dare you,
Right.
like we betrayed her
Right.
because we're holding her down and talking to her, and then all of a sudden it's like,
Yeah.
and then she kind of her face changes, and then she cries for about a second, and then
Yeah.
is like, I'm over it. But yeah, she's in that nice time where she won't remember anything.
Well, and hopefully she'll, by the time she gets to be my kid's age, hopefully she'll remember. See, like my kids, because of the cancer thing,
Oh
like
yeah,
they didn't get like acclimated to it when they were younger. Like, oh, this is what happens. You get shots. It's no big deal, right? Instead, like we are starting to give them shots at like 6 years old or whatever.
yeah.
Wait a second, like this has never happened before. You're gonna stick that
Yeah,
where?
where they understand what is happening too. Like,
Exactly. And the funny thing is with Tristan, I'm like, bro, you had a port in your chest.
yeah,
Like you were getting stabbed with all kinds of crazy shit for like 3 years. And that little tiny needle is like causing you to anyway. So it's always an adventure. And they were gleeful when they realized dad was getting a shot and they were not.
yeah. I've gotten one recently because when B was born, they wanted us to get one. I was told to get one. So I've had an MMR shot pretty recently. But yeah, so yeah, shots, kids, yay. Um,
Yay.
um, I think you should all take your kids to get shots.
Yeah. Even if you don't have kids, you should take a kid to get shots just so you know what it's like. I think, it's like, we joke about like, and I'm sure you know this now at this point, but it's like, my whole perspective on parents completely changed after I became one.
Oh
Right.
yeah,
And then you're like all the stuff that you would sort of look down your, and I tried really hard not to be a judgmental
yeah,
person either. Like I was really like, and I try to be that way with most things in my life, not try to judge people and, it's kind of all this stuff. I think that's, part of being a teacher, right? And
yeah,
it's like, but you can't look, you cannot help it when you look at other parents and you just think, why is your kid doing blank? And then like like I look, I would be the one that would be like, I can't believe that kid is on a phone at the restaurant, right? And
yeah,
now like the moment we get to the restaurant, all five of us, I'm like, here's my phone. Like I'm like, just take it, be quiet. I'm gonna talk to your mom for the first time in like
yeah.
a week, and you guys just you have a ball over there. You just have to turn them off when the food comes. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's
Well,
that's parenting in a nutshell.
we're kind of at that now with the pacifier. Like we know we should be weaning her off of it, but like especially when you're out somewhere and she's getting a little fussy, like it's really
Yeah.
nice to just put the plug in.
Oh yeah.
Because
100%.
it soothes her, like it instantly calms her down and even makes her want to go to sleep. And I don't like we like during the day it's hard for her to get her to take a nap until she has that
Yeah.
in her mouth. And like if we're in the car and we want her to take a nap while we're driving,
Yeah.
like, she if she has that thing in her mouth, she instantly puts her hand. She does this thing where she puts her hand over her
Yeah.
eye, and that's why she's like, okay, I'm considering sleeping.
Yeah.
Like she instantly takes like does like this kind of like Vulcan mind meld around her head and is
Yeah.
like she's like, I'm ready to sleep now. But now I'm like terrified. I'm like, oh God, when we have to take this thing away full time, like she's gonna be so mad at us. Like she's not like running around with it constantly,
Yeah.
but she definitely likes it because if there's one sitting out and she's to the point where she can just reach so many things now, and so you'll just turn and look at her and she's got one in her mouth. Like just
Yeah.
yeah, I like this. Especially
So
now
many
that
things though.
yeah,
I mean, so many things they just eventually decide they're done with it.
yeah,
Like one day she'll just kind of be like, nah, and it'll be done and she'll be on to doing something else that'll be highly embarrassing.
yeah, yeah. She and she's got molars coming in right now, so she can whatever she needs to soothe that pain, she can do whatever she wants. But yeah, so that's what's going on with our kids. That's about going to take us to the end of this thing. I appreciate all y'all that came back. A lot of, I think we
Yeah.
had we had quite a few that came back, and we also had quite a few people that found us and just went straight to listen to the first episode instead, which is cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
I've done that with podcasts before, especially ones that are long like this one. Like, yeah, when I have time, I have time.
Some might say too long, but we don't care.
But yeah, if you like it, even if you don't like it, give us 5 stars on whatever thing you're listening to. And but we don't really care. But I actually, truthfully, I care a little bit. But yeah, but give us 5 stars. Give us a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. Then you just get it automatically delivered to your device, which is easier than going and finding it every week or going and finding it on Kook Center. You can go to Kook Center too. Give us a page view there. That's fine.
Yeah. With one stone.
Yeah, exactly. This is our livelihood, everyone. Not really, but I do want to make what we heard that Bill Simmons is making $15 million a year off his podcast. So yeah, if we can get to that level, that would be great.
That'd be okay.
Yeah, I'd be good with making 15 million.
I'd probably quit teaching.
I think I would not work other than doing this. I think we might even buy nicer equipment.
We might.
But unless that would ruin the charm. I don't know.
Maybe I'd run for president as a centrist independent.
You definitely, I don't know. You need $1 billion for that, man. Come on.
Hey, who's to say what the podcasting industry turns into?
All right. So, give us a like and subscribe and do all that stuff. And you can follow me on Twitter at the Craig Powers, and you can follow Kook Center at Kook Center. You can follow my Instagram and see what I'm drinking all the time at Craig W. Powers. Also, adorable pictures of my daughter. There was one particularly good one this week that I think you'll like, but I'm not going to give it away. Also, we have that podcast versus everyone at gmail.com. That's VS, not versus spelled out. Send us questions. I'd love to make fun of you on air.
Heck yeah.
Thanks for listening, and see you next week.
Peace.